here. Good afternoon. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm the Associate Features Editor at Variety, and I am thrilled to welcome you to this SAG Foundation conversation with the film Nebraska. I rarely get a chance to use this term, so I'm going to relish it, but today's guest gives me an excuse to say that we have a living legend here in the studio. Literally. I literally do not have time to list his accomplishments, let alone even highlights, but just for a few, coming home, that championship season, Silent Running, and with his role as Woody Grant in Nebraska, he adds another great character to the pantheon of actors, one that in fact won him the Best Actor award at Cannes this year. So please welcome Bruce Dern.
Actors.
Yes, all actors.
Fucking time.
This is actually an audience of all SAG actors, so I'd like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
I got it when two guys agreed to step forward for me. One, I went to a high school called New Trier. It's in Winnetka, Illinois. So Charlton Heston stepped forward for me, and Rock Hudson stepped forward for me.
Wow. Those are pretty strong endorsements.
Huh?
Those are pretty strong endorsements.
That sure was.
So on to Nebraska, which is such a beautiful
I'm
film.
supposed to say hi, New York.
Oh yeah, that's right. We're live streaming to New York right now.
We forgot to include you.
Yeah. Well, actually, hi all over the world, actually, including they could be watching this in Omaha, which I hear you're off to in a couple days.
I'm what?
Are you going to Omaha?
Tomorrow morning.
Oh, to show the film to an audience?
To show it there, and then, because that's where Alexander Payne lives, and then to go about 200 miles north to Norfolk, Nebraska, which is the base that we went to all these little towns out of. I shot a little bit in Norfolk, but basically every day we were an hour out and an hour back. And the last 2 weeks of the movie, we shot for 9 days. We traveled 250 miles a day and shot as we went.
Wow.
So that's where all the car stuff is, and that's and it was cold and grim, and very black and white.
So how did Bob Nelson's script for Nebraska find its way to you? When did you first become aware of the project?
Actually, 10 years ago this week.
This week?
I got it from my agent people at CAA. They said, Alexander Payne wants you to read this, so I read it. There was no offer. There was going to be made as a movie right away or anything. It was just, what did you think? And the next morning I went to Toys R Us as soon as it opened, and bought him a red truck, took it over to his office, put a letter in the truck, and said, I think I'm Woody. And never heard a word. About 3 weeks later, my daughter Laura, who had starred in Alexander's first movie, Citizen Ruth, called me and said she ran into Alexander, and he said he was very grateful for the nice note that I wrote him. Another couple of years went by, and he was making a movie called Sideways. What do I know? A couple more years go by, and he's making The Descendants. No part for Brucey. Except the Armani model took the part.
Oh, yes, always.
So, and deserved it, and did a wonderful job. But I never heard anything, and about 18 months ago, or I guess the spring of May of 2012, no, 2011, excuse me. I went and Alexander asked me to come see him. I went and saw him. We talked for a long time, and he said, I'm thinking about doing my movie now, and, I got you in mind. Oh, boy. And I knew the minute I saw it on the page, I mean, you all saw it, we'd be morons if we didn't jump it apart to have a chance to do a role like this, particularly me. And I was enamored of it. I loved what was on the paper. It seemed to work for me. And I was excited. 2 months later, I pick up a trade paper, when they were every day then, and it said that they were talking to Gene Hackman. And so I said, well, Gene Hackman's a very good actor. He'll do this in a second. And so Gene Hackman passed, and the movie died. And then we went to last May, not this last May, but the May before, a year and a half ago, and I was shooting a movie in Vermont with Geneviève Bujold. I don't know how many of you remember her, but she's a wonderful little girl that made her debut in a movie called Anne of a Thousand Days with Richard Burton, where she played Anne Boleyn. And she's got hair down to her butt, and did then and does now. And they said, can you be in, this was the 27th of April, can you be in Alexander's office on Friday? This was a Tuesday. I said, Alexander Payne, the guy that's going to make that movie, Nebraska? Yeah. I said, I'll be there. Will he be there? I didn't want to go meet John Jackson, the casting director, again, Yeah. And so they said yes. And so Jay Craven, who was the director of this movie that Geneviève and I were doing, I went to him and I said, I need out. I need to finish the work, obviously. He says, can you do 9 scenes in a day? I said, bring it on. So Geneviève was not nuts about this because all the scenes were with her. And we'd been on the movie 5.5 weeks, so it wasn't as if we were doing the whole movie in a day. So I did that, and I got on a plane. I went back, and the next day when I got there, I went to his office. And it's interesting, and I tell you guys this because you get it. A lot of the other Q&As, we have actors and stuff, but they're also interlopers that aren't doing what we do. I went into his office, and in the room was Alexander and John Jackson, who's his casting director. And as you look at the movie here, and look at those faces, John Jackson was there 8 months before we shot the movie. And with Alexander, they did 20,000 miles within the state of Nebraska, just looking for faces. And I'm not talking about the speaking parts. I'm talking about the extras' faces. When they found them, they locked them into the building they were in where they saw them. And they said, be here on such and such a day, October, November last year, and you're going to be in this movie. And so we went and never shot the buildings. We just shot the faces, because you can't find stuff like that when you call central casting. They're not going to come out. Yeah, we're interesting. I was an extra. I know what it is. But you can't get faces like you get in those bars and the things like that. And a lot of them then acted in the movie later, too. And in the middle of Alexander's room was a camera on a tripod. And I said, that's not real cool with me. I'm a terrible reader. I don't read off a page well. I don't audition well. And I've done enough movies that you've seen and told me all the movies you liked. He loved Smile, which is a movie I liked a lot. He loved a lot of other things. And I said, is this necessary? And he's a no bullshit guy, Alexander. And he said, it helps me with the studio. And it suddenly dawned on me, maybe black and white was not the only problem getting the movie made. Maybe it was Brucey from Winnetka. And nobody might have been nuts about me doing it. And he had hung in with me, all this time with me. And he said, so John Jackson and I just read a couple of scenes, and I'm just looking at the paper, and we read. I finished, and he was sitting on a couch like where I am, and I sat down where you are after I got out of the little chair. And he said, 10 years ago, he said, I'm going to give myself a compliment. 10 years ago, when I first saw this piece of material, because he didn't write this, they brought it to him to executive produce it, not to direct it. They thought he could find them a young director who might, be able to get it done. When he saw it, he said, I'm doing this. Nobody else is going to do this. I want to do it. And he said, I had you in mind when I saw this 10 years ago for the first time. And I want you to do my movie. And that was it. And I got up. I said, thank you. I hugged him. He's kind of an academic kind of a guy. He changes clothes a couple times every day to let you know when you go to gym at 2:30 that he is going to put another sweater on or something. So when you come back from gym and pound erasers because you were an asshole in school that day, he's going to be a different kind of a person that comes at you, but he's always the same guy. So he said, as I get to the door, he says to me, I do have to tell you one thing. Tomorrow afternoon, I made a commitment to see another guy. Oh, my God. And I said, well, he's right for the part, so what can I do? He said, I'll call you after I'm done seeing him. It's kind of a courtesy. So the next day, he called me about 4 in the afternoon. I was driving back from one of my runs that I take every day. And he said, the part's yours. I will call the studio Monday morning. I will make it official so that you're not worried that they don't want you or anything. They have approved you, so don't worry about that. They have not approved the black and white, however. And we're having big budget battles over the movie because of that. They want to cut 50% out of my budget because of black and white. But I also told them I'm not making the movie if I can't make it in black and white. So here's Brucey with a shot of a lifetime, worrying now they're not going to make the movie because they're not going to let him do it in black and white. And once again, I'm going down for the count. And he, the next day, saw the most unlikely person to see the movie. And to this day, I can't tell you what he looks like age-wise or anything else. But the guy he saw wasn't an actor. It was a director named Carol Ballard.
Oh, wow.
And Carol Ballard directed The Black Stallion, which is pretty goddamn good movie making. And he just wanted to see him because he doesn't live down here. He's not mainstream. He has horses. He lives up in the woods and the mountains wherever he lives. And so then he said, let me tell you who I'm thinking about for the other parts. He said, did you see About Schmidt? I said, am I going to see a Jack Nicholson movie or not? So I said, yes. He said, well, June Squibb was his wife in About Schmidt, and I'd like to have her in this. And then what do you know about an actor named Will Forte? Well, Will knows, just like I'll tell you. I didn't know who he was. I didn't see MacGruber. I'm not seeing a guy run around with a piece of celery out of his butt's not the first thing I want to go see. And I had hosted a couple Saturday Night Lives, and it was way before he was there, in the cast group and everything. So I hadn't watched it a long time, so I didn't know who he was. When we got to work, the linchpin of this movie is Will Forte's performance. And the reason it's so endearing to me is he gave up a familiar way of working that has made him a living for 20 years, that he's good at, that he's quick at, and sacrificed that comfort and realized we were making a movie in a different style than he was used to, and a different way that he was used to. And for his kind of nobility to give that up for the sake of the team is, to me, the most endearing thing I take away from the movie. Because, and not only that, but he's built a whole new career for himself.
Yes.
I mean, he's good. It's not just that. You believe he's my kid. you know, now if I could get Laura and him to kind of get together, maybe, you know, but I don't think it's going to happen. But anyway, the thing that made it wonderful about Alexander, and I know I'm going on too long without asking
people
a
are
question,
here to
but
hear you, not me.
It's Alexander gives you fabulous teammates, and that group of people, every single person there, and some of them are heavyweight people. The first day Mary Louise Wilson, who plays my sister-in-law, came to work, she said to me, "Oh, you know, Mr. Dern, it's nice to meet you and everything, and I was told that I had to get up real in the morning if I was going to come work with you." I said, "Please, ma'am, you're doing fabulous. You've done fabulous these first couple takes. Don't worry about anything. You're great." She said, "Good, because I'm kind of a little tired because I've been away from home for the last 2.5 years. I won the Tony last year on Broadway because I was the mother in Grey Gardens." So that was rather embarrassing to me. And how good is she in the movie? I mean, it's just, and day by day. And then I said to Alexander when I drove the truck down the seat that day, I'd never seen Angela McEwen before. She lives in Whittier. I don't know that she's ever been on film before.
She plays the former
She
girlfriend.
plays the old girlfriend of mine. And when you talk about what's great about Alexander, the very first day, he said two very specific things to me. He said, number one, "You see anything going on the set today you haven't seen before in 50 some odd years?" I said, "Yeah. Everybody seems to be pulling their oar. Everybody." He said, "Well, hopefully that's because we have 85 crew members here. 47 have worked every day on every movie I've ever made. So you know you have a family." Then he says to me, "I wonder if you do Faden," meaning Faden Papa Michael, the cameraman, "and I a favor that we're not sure you've ever done in your career for a whole movie." And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Don't show us anything. Let us find it." When he said that, I put my arm around him. I knew I'd found a friend who was with a cameraman who felt the same way. And what you see is the result of what I've tried to do for 55 years. I don't push. I don't perform. I don't make this. I don't put in Dernsies. I don't put in anything to make you notice more of what I'm doing than being the character. And that's because he said, "We'll find it." And with every actor in all the movies he does, the sumbitch finds it. And you don't have to put on stuff. And, you know, I began my career with Mr. Kazan. I was under contract to him in 1958, and when he first saw me. And so I began my training with Gadge and Mr. Strasberg. And the first year I was ever an actor, they were at the actor studio. I'd never acted before. They would not allow me to do a scene in which I had any dialogue. I always had to be the silent partner in the scenes so they could train what they felt was a pure instrument, an instrument that hadn't been used yet, to learn to respond everything from the heart, everything personally, everything what's going on with you. And then find that, put it in a character, put the character on top of that, and mold something. And then after a year, I was finally allowed to do a scene with a girl named Salome Jens where I got to speak. And they didn't want me to have the obligation of dialogue as I began acting rather than behavior. And that's why whatever I've done in my career, why I'm here today and with this role, because what I really try to do is what they began with. And when I began, I left Philadelphia, I quit college, I failed to make the Olympic team at 800 meters as a runner in 1956. I quit college, I figured I didn't know what I wanted to do. And when I started seeing some movies, I said, you know what? They're touching me. I want to know how you can do that. And they're reaching me. I'm involved. And I went a couple weeks to this little dramatic school in Philadelphia, and there were three things apparent. Go to New York, try and become a member of the Actors Studio, work for Kazan. And what's great is nowadays, I don't know how great it is for all of our, upbringing, so to speak, in the business and learning. Nowadays, they seem to avoid New York, come quicker to Hollywood, put the theater on the back burner, and do anything they can to work for Alexander or Quentin Tarantino or the Reitman kid or whoever it is out there making movies. And so 60 years later, it's come back to that's exactly what it is. And Marty, we made a documentary a few years ago called A Decade Under the Influence. And it was 4 actors, 4 directors, 4 writers who made the movies of the 70s, or not the movies, but a lot of movies in the 70s. And at the end of the movie, Marty Scorsese was one of the directors. He comes out and he says, I am absolutely blown away by the wizardry and the technology of movie making today. I don't know that I could make a movie like that. Plus, their propensity to make money fast. $100 million in a weekend. They say the Hunger Games may make $150 million. These 3 days. I mean, and that blew Marty away. It blows me away. It blows, I'm sure, a lot of you away. I mean, I don't know how to do that. How do you put ingredients together, or whatever it is? How does it get done? And then Marty says, and despite all of that, and that brilliance in the technology and the wizardry and the money, at the end of the day, I miss the people. I came here to do movies about people. Alexander's here to do movies about people. I was lucky. Whatever has happened to me on this trip, it was wonderful to win the award. I won at Cannes. I was blown away. You're talking about the world. You're not talking about the best film at the Regal this year. And so I was very lucky. But the win for me, and you're the only guys and girls that I know will understand exactly what I'm saying, the biggest win I'll ever have, I got the fucking part. That's why there's not a one of you in this room that can stop. I don't care where you are. There is no retirement for us. I mean, we're not retiring. They say don't knock Jimmy Caan. I love Jimmy Caan, but I'm not retiring so he can get another part that I can't get. You know what I'm saying? What it is that we're still growing. We're still learning. I'm not saying you still have to study or do anything like that, but what I'm saying, there's an hour a day, every day of your lives that you piss away doing something. Take something about a character. Take a piece of yourself. Lend it to something. And just work on it. You don't need a partner. You don't need anything else. If you do need a partner, get one. Go to lunch as 2 characters. One of the exercises when I taught that I always did, which is the most revealing to tell you immediately how to find out if you have game and you can be... Wendy Guerrero is my business partner. We started a company 2 weeks ago. It's called Publicly Private. To me, that's what acting has always been. If you have the ability, when they turn the switch on, or when you walk out and that curtain goes up, to start by giving a piece of yourself to the audience that you would only give privately, where nobody else would ever see it, you just might have a chance to be somebody. And I don't mean that out of the movie or anything else, because everyone in this room is unique in that you're yourselves. You have your life history that you've lived. So why not start with that? Why try and imitate somebody else or do somebody else's style? What have you got to say about something? You matter. You've had a life. You have, obviously, you see the movie. The hardest scene I've had to do in my career is going through the old house. And that's
Really?
because, Thomas Wolfe says, you can't go home again. You must go home again. And you must go home because you find out who you are. And if you have people like that in your lives, and we all have, you realize, and this movie helps tell it a little bit, make sure you say to them what you really want to say before it's too late, before they don't have a chance. And it's real simple, because you carry the greatest health help there is on earth. It's not a shot, it's not a pill, it's a hug. And if you can get that in your family next week on Thursday, if you all get together like a lot of people do, and watch the Lions run the, I don't know who they're playing, but they'll run somebody out of the gym because they're at home. And but the point of it is that I get so upset when I'll see performances and I'll see movies, and I watch some television, so I see a lot of it. I was in a series for 5 years, Big Love. They never used me, but I was in it. Thank you. And we all have a chance. And in my 55 years out here, I learned one thing. There isn't a person in this room that I can look at specifically or as a group that isn't going to get a chance for some door to open. And when that door opens, you have to understand something. You're in at 3. The next guy who's perfect for the role is in at 3:10, not 3:15. So there's 10 minutes on the girl's sheet of paper, and the first thing you learn is how to read upside down when you go and see who else is coming in. You do all that stuff, and you get in there, and then when you get in the room, you got 5 minutes. But in the room, you really only have 3 minutes. And what do you do so you can at least get remembered? Because the first 2 weeks you've been there, the girl trashes your picture and resume, and, I always tell other actors, when you do scenes in class and stuff like that, or wherever you do it, plays or whatever, write it down on your resume on the back. They're not going to check and see if you were in Paducah, Kentucky doing Medea.
You're advocating lying?
Yeah. I mean, so
your
write
advice?
it down, but then be able to do a scene from it if they ask you. You know what I mean? Don't say, oh, well, I can't play Bo from Bus Stop. Well, you said you did. And so what you do is, in that 3 minutes, the only thing you have specifically that you can leave them with, it's not the reading, it's not anything else. It's you see what's going on in the room, you take from that, and you leave a piece of yourself. Because they will never, ever forget that. Because that's what they're looking for. You can read a scene 100 ways and do what, be Jonathan Winters or Robin or any of these guys that go in and be all different kind of things. But if you leave a piece of your soul in the room, they'll say, who the fuck was that? Yeah. I mean, is that girl there with the glasses and the long hair, is that for real? You mean she really went to Carnegie Tech? I mean, or however you do it, but it's your advantage, and it's the only card you have to play to ensure that you mean something and that you have an opportunity. I mean, that's all it was for me. My first interview, I went into Lynn Stallmaster's office, who was at that time the biggest, casting director in Hollywood. It was 1962. And I went with my 2 buddies, Harry Dean Stanton and Jack Nicholson, and they had already been in, and they each were in less than 4 minutes, so I knew there was no... I go into Lynn Stallmaster's room, and the prick is on the telephone.
Oh.
I grabbed the phone, slammed it down in his cradle, and I said, I got 2 minutes and 40 seconds left of my life. And whoever you're calling on the phone, whether it's a piece of ass or whatever it is, doesn't matter to me, because we can do better for you in that department than you can do yourself. So just hear me, because I'm out. He said, you, and take your 2 friends with you. You will never have careers. You're the rudest guys I've ever seen in my life. There's no place for you. So just get out now. I got to the door. I says, we're out of here. And when I get to the door, and Jack and Harry Dean stand up, and he said, but wait 1 second. He said, if you ever tell a soul that I told you this, you will never get a SAG card. You will never work. You won't work extra because I know all the people at Central Casting. So you're done. But call your agent. Tell him there is a Gunsmoke starting Tuesday with 3 of the most obnoxious brothers in it anybody ever said. We went, and that's really how we started out.
By the way, I feel like Alexander has come full circle because I understand there's an actress who appears in this film that you've never worked with before.
An actress
In the last scene?
that I've never worked with before?
Your daughter.
Oh, yeah. He came up to me. We were getting ready to do the scene where I drive down the truck at the end. He comes over to me because Laura was visiting. And she's a member of the camp. I mean, she's a counselor now, but in Citizen Ruth, she was like I was. And he said, "Is it true, Lauren, you've never been on screen, never been in a movie together?" I said, "Right." I said, "The mother has. They've done 9 films together. And the mother's been nominated for 3 Oscars in 3 of them. And Laura and the mother were the only mother and daughter ever nominated from the same movie for Academy Awards in a movie called Rambling Rose. And Laura and her mother and I are the only people in the history of Hollywood to all have individual stars on Hollywood Boulevard.
By each other, right?
Other families, but never mother, father, child." And he said, "So that's not right." So I start driving down the street. I didn't know what he was going to do or anything. And as I drive past the alley in take 1, I did 2 takes. In take 1, I don't see this, but the camera sees Laura coming up the alley with a T-shirt on and jeans. And at the end of the alley is a dumpster. She comes up the alley, and just after I pass, she climbs into the dumpster. So not only is she in a shot I'm in, but in Citizen Ruth, she lived in a dumpster.
Yep.
So that was Alexander, getting as much as he could for $1. And then the second take he did just where it had gotten colder and stuff, and so she's the blonde girl walking down the street as I'm going down the street as an extra. So that was cool. We finally got to be in a movie together. But the advantage you get is Mr. Kazan taught me something at the very beginning. And I didn't tell you this formally, but I'm telling you this collectively. Never tell a director what you're going to do because he's got take 2. So I don't rehearse. I rehearse all the camera moves for everybody else, but I'm not giving it away because it may work the first time like it never works again. And you got to get the confidence of the director that can happen. But when he says, "Well, what are you going to do?" I mean, because they're all terrified, and if you tell them, they'll say, "No, it's out of the movie, don't do it." But Mr. Kazan said, "We always have take 2, Bruce, and you don't." And Mr. Hitchcock was the toughest at that. He said to me the first day of Family Plot, I pulled my chair right where she is. For 10 weeks, I sat right next to him. I said, "That's the drill." And he was so big, he can't turn and look at you because his neck is as big as his chest and the rest of his body. And he sits in a little director's chair like this. So when he does stand up, his whole chair goes with him because his handlebars are bigger than here, so they're sticking out. And he would just turn to me. He wouldn't turn. He'd just keep his head forward. And he said, as he stood up, he said, "A hand, please, Bruce." So I had to grab the legs of the chair and pull a chair up. And the very first day of work, he said to me, he said to the first AD, a guy named Howard Cassange, and later went on, became a big Spielberg producer, but he said, "Howard, might I have a word with the crew?" At the end of the first day. He said, "Sure." Hitch got up. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for a wonderful first day." Went around the set, shook the hands of 65 crew people, looked them in the eye, thanked them, and called them by their first name. And when people say, was he really there? Did he really direct the scenes? The guy knew every goddamn thing he was going to do all the time. And Karen Black, you know, she's not here now, and we miss a big talent because of that. And she was a good dame. And she had a scene her very first day, and to tell you how nervous she can be, and Karen could bring it, trust me. And he said to her, "Are you ready, Karen?" "Yes." All she had to do was walk through a kitchen, open and close 7 cupboard doors, and go off. No dialogue, no nothing. That was her first shot. "Action, Karen." She went, opened the 7 doors, closed them, and walked off. Mr. Hitchcock said, "Thank you, that's a cut. Thank you, Karen. Now, gentlemen and ladies, we're over here." And he started moving the set. Karen raised her hand and said, and kind of ran after him because he was starting to try and get up to go. He said, "Mr. Hitchcock." "Yes, Karen." "It's my first day. I'm so nervous and everything. I want another. Can I have another? Please, can I have another?" "Why?" "Well, because I can do better than that. I'm a little intimidated. Everything else, all right. Karen, go to your mark." She goes over to her mark. He says, "Go." She does all the 7 things just as well, maybe a little better, maybe not, I don't know, but certainly served the scene well, and walks off. And he said, "Thank you, Karen. Now we're over here, boys." And everybody starts to move. Karen runs after Hitch, and I'm standing next to him. I said, "But Mr. Hitchcock," she said, you never turned the camera on.
Oh.
"Why would you do that?" And he said, "Because I have the one I want."
From Mr. Kazan to Mr. Hitchcock to Mr. Tarantino recently, and now to Mr. Payne. Such a beautiful performance. Thank you so much for being here, and congratulations again. Have fun in Omaha.